Have you ever wondered if the soul also gets osteoporosis? Not the bones, but the thing that holds the silence when no one calls your name anymore. There's a kind of fracture that doesn't show up in X-rays. It begins slowly, in the smallest resignations. The armchair that replaces the walk to the gate. The whatever that swallows the I want. The smile that becomes scarce. That's how the spirit starts to crack from within. No blood, no noise, no rush. Imagine an old house with jammed windows where the wind only enters if begged. Inside it, there's a mirror that no longer reflects the face, but the distance between who we were and who we pretend to accept we've become. That house is us. And time, a resident who stacks boxes of unopened memories, old letters never sent, plans forever postponed, gestures of affection abandoned out of pride. The soul's dust is made of these pauses. Time, when it finds no movement, petrifies the heart. And when was it that you began to step away from yourself? When did growing up become the same as going silent? Did you too feel that fine, almost elegant, but brutal, crack opening a gap between what still pulses and what has already given up? This is the question that lingers, and this is where the answer begins. There comes a moment when the body keeps going, but the soul stops. It sits by the side of the road, exhausted, like an old shepherd of shadows, watching everything else move on. Bills, appointments, conversations that say nothing. In that moment, the soul isn't depressed. It's on strike. The face still smiles out of courtesy. The eyes still follow the clock. But inside, something has stopped believing. Wonder was buried gradually, like a flowerless ritual. First the awe, then desire, and finally, the hope of being truly seen. That's where the archangels of abandonment dwell. The angel of silence, who keeps us from asking for help. The angel of routine, who turns boredom into refuge. The angel of weariness, who convinces the soul that dreaming is dangerous. You begin to adapt to absence as one adapts to a leaky ceiling. It's part of the house. And one day, without noticing, you swap the mirror for the calendar. And the mirror, the real one, begins to return a stranger. Someone who no longer dreams. Someone who merely endures. In this state, pain doesn't scream. It drags, like dry leaves on an autumn ground pushed by indifferent wind. This is invisible aging, not the bodies, that one everyone sees, but the flames, the part that once lit your eyes from the inside. There is a forest that grows inside forgetfulness. It doesn't appear on any map, yet it exists in everyone who has quietly given up on themselves. With every gesture left undone, every word silenced out of exhaustion or irrelevance, another tree rises, leafless, fruitless, unnamed. And the forest thickens, heavy, until the sky is no longer visible. In this terrain lives the archetype of the withdrawn heart, a figure with sunken eyes, cloaked in unfulfilled memories, carrying an unlit lantern like someone who once had faith. It doesn't speak. It only walks in circles, dragging its feet over the dry leaves of former enthusiasms. Its gaze is made of inherited fatigue. And every step it takes echoes in us, as a reminder of what we failed to reach for. It appears in the longest nights, when silence becomes too dense to ignore. It whispers between one insomnia and another that it's too late to begin again, that now is the time only to maintain, to survive, to wait. But few realize this forest is not a punishment. It is a reflection. It grows from the abandonment of self, from the "I'll look at that later," the "I'm too old for this," the "that's silly now." Each silent renunciation becomes a branch, each swallowed smile, a root. Aging without breaking inside demands more than strength. It demands the courage not to betray your own fire. Not the fire of youth, but the one that still flickers quietly beneath the ashes of routine. This fire doesn't shout or demand, it simply waits. Some days it isn't time that ages us. It's the waiting. Waiting for someone to call, for something to happen, for the feeling to return, for the faith to come back. But some forms of waiting never end. They simply turn into routine, And in that routine, the soul folds in on itself, like a sheet stored for years in a drawer that no longer opens easily. It is in this lukewarm rhythm that we forget the great silent strategy to protect the ember. Not the kind of easy enthusiasm or inspirational phrases. I mean the ember, that faint light that survives even when everything else goes dark. It makes no sound. It doesn't step on stage, but it endures. And for many of us, that's the only flame left. When the world no longer asks how you are, when invitations stop and the Sunday table begins to shrink, when the mirror no longer offers vanity, but remnants. That is the emptiness where the fertile ground of regeneration lives, because there is a wisdom that only blooms in the soil of silence, and a beauty that only appears when we accept our tiredness without surrendering to it. The best strategy not to break inside is to allow yourself to remain human, unfinished, imperfect, touchable. It's not strength that saves us. It's contact, a small act of gentleness toward yourself, a look without judgment at your own slowness, a simple ritual, making your own tea, opening a notebook, watering a plant, as if to say, I'm still here. And if that still is all we have today, let it be whole. Let it be shelter, not transition. We're not waiting for anything. We're keeping ourselves company, and that alone is already a sacred form of resistance. Maybe the best strategy for growing old without breaking inside is not to fight time, but to learn how to inhabit it with dignity. Aging is not collapse. It is a calling, an invitation to the essential. The shell cracks because the fruit is ready. What we call loneliness might actually be the sacred space where the soul finally hears its own voice without interference. What we call loss may simply be the return of what was never truly ours. And what we call the end might only be the moment when the skin of illusion peels away. There is a peace that only arrives to those who allow themselves not to know who they are anymore. Because in that apparent forgetting, a deeper memory awakens, the one from before the roles, before the expectations, before the performance, the memory of being. You are not breaking. You are opening. You are not getting lost. You are shedding. You are not getting old. You are coming home. Accept the light that enters through the cracks. It comes from within. If this touched something still breathing in you, write in the comments, I'm still here. Share this with someone who also needs to remember. Subscribe to keep walking with us in silence through the shadow years.